Hi everybody, and welcome to my very first webinar, How to Deal with Your Toxic Parent. So how this is going to play out tonight is that I'm going to go through my PowerPoint presentation. So don't worry if you can't see it, or it doesn't seem very big on your screen, because I'm actually going to address every dot point on it, and we'll move through that. And then at the end of the PowerPoint, I'm going to be taking your questions. So what I've suggested is that if you have a pad and pen beside you, and just write down any questions that you have and save them until near the end, because you might find that they get covered along the way. And when I'm finished with the PowerPoint, I'll get rid of that and you'll actually be able to see me on the screen. And we'll be finished by 9 o'clock. So before we get started moving through the PowerPoint, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how this all came to be. And as a therapist, I have been working with clients for quite a while. And one of the biggest issues generally is, your family and your parents and all the things that you hear and learn from them, and lots of things to overcome. And I've had several clients who've had what I would call extremely toxic parents. And I ended up writing a blog post which was called Toxic Parents, How to Know When It's Time to Let Go. And I wrote that over a year ago. And I still find that people are finding me from over the world, and they tell me when they read that blog post that they felt like I was speaking to them. So that really started me thinking that this is an issue that a lot of people just don't talk about. And it's an issue that a lot of therapists don't really specialise in. And so this is one of those cases where I think the work has found me, and I really love it, and I found it really rewarding. And one of the things is that there is hope, there is help, and you can really make amazing changes with some skills and your willingness to change your attitude. So they are very learnable, and is actually a skill. And now we're going to move through the PowerPoint, and you have to forgive me, this is my very first webinar. It's only the second time that I've used this system. So we'll see how we go. First, just really be aware that this is a major button pusher. And one of the reasons why having toxic parents is such a difficult issue that we don't really talk about is that if you are in an abusive relationship, say, with a partner, or you have a friend who's treating you really badly, and people know about that, you start to tell people that you're being badly treated, and what they will say is that, well, leave, or get help, or they'll say you don't have to put up with that. But if you talk to people about your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, any other relatives like that, and you talk about the possibility that you don't want to see them, you're starting to avoid them, your relationship is very difficult, then that's where you don't get that support, because there are very few people who are going to encourage you to cut your ties with your family, because there's all of those issues and guilt and myths and stories and expectations about what family is, which is why we really don't talk about it a lot, and it's a really difficult subject to deal with. So as I go along through the presentation, just notice if anything does push your buttons, because I can pretty much guarantee you are going to find something that is going to push a button for you somewhere. So the aims and objective of tonight's presentation is firstly to understand what a toxic family relationship is and the reasons why we don't talk about it. And it's also to give you some practical skills to identify those toxic relationships and to give you awareness of your part in it, because every relationship depends on two people. It's never 100%. And even if the person you're dealing with is toxic, you have a lot more power to change how you feel and how you react and what you do in that relationship than you might think. And this is what this is all about. It's about what you can do for you to support yourself. And I'm going to start off just giving you some very simple tools. So what defines a healthy relationship? Well, I think we all pretty much know what these things are, but we'll go through them just so we've got a really, really clear picture of what you really want to be aiming for in your relationship. So a healthy relationship is one where there is mutual love and caring. It doesn't have to be exactly 50-50, but you know that the other person genuinely does care for you in the best way that they can, given their personality, their circumstances, their life events, all of those different sorts of things. So it's very mutual. And there's also mutual respect. So what that means is that you have good boundaries. So your parents, your family, they know how far to go. They follow the normal social conventions of treating people well. You know you can be around them and trust them. And most importantly of all, you know that you can argue with them or disagree with them, but it's still okay because you know that you're loved and you know that the situation can be resolved. There is compassion and understanding on both sides, and that's really important. When you feel understood, when you have compassion and empathy for the other person, that's when you can communicate clearly. And you know if you go to somebody with a problem and they have that compassion and understanding for you, that you can work things out, and that defines a healthy relationship. And there is mutual concern for the welfare and well-being of each other, and that's really important in a family, because in a family, any relationship, we want to be able to care for that person and look after that person and know that that's going to be returned. And in general, we feel unconditionally loved and accepted, and so we can be who we are. We can let it all hang out. We can show not just the good in us, but we can show the sides that aren't that good. So, as I said before, you can argue, you can disagree, you can be grumpy, you can have a shitty day, all of those sorts of things, but you know the relationship is loving and supportive, and you will be able to get over it. And the most defining thing of a healthy relationship is that it feels emotionally safe for you to be in it. It's not something that's dragging you down. A toxic relationship, on the other hand, is very, very different. And the key characteristics of a toxic relationship is that it contains actions and behaviours that are very emotionally damaging. And you know this is true by how you feel around a toxic person, and generally how you feel after being with that toxic person. It's almost like sometimes you can walk away with that emotional hangover, so you can feel flat, depressed, upset, resentful, all of those different sorts of things. There is lots of guilt and manipulation. In fact, in a toxic relationship, guilt and manipulation are the two major tools to control you. Control is what it's all about. And also, as well as that guilt and manipulation and control, there is that self-centeredness. So you'll find yourself saying or thinking, or other people saying, well, it's all about them. It's always all about them. They can never see my side. They can never put themselves in my shoes. They have no empathy. It doesn't matter how sick I am, how tired I am, how overwhelmed I am. It's all about them. and that is a major characteristics of a toxic relationship. There is insecurity and anxiety, and a lot of toxic relationships, they really are driven by keeping you feeling insecure and anxious. So you don't know where you stand, you don't know if the person's going to be there. You might want to ask them to do something very important for you, but you're never really sure whether they're going to do it or not. You want to go to them and feel like they're going to look after you, but you're never 100% sure of what's going to happen. And there is constant criticism and blame. And a lot of my clients tell me that with their relationship with either one of their parents is that all they hear is this constant litany of, you know, why don't you do that? You never do that. You're not a good daughter. You're not a good son. You're useless. You're this. There's a constant criticism, and they can never be pleased. And everything is always someone else's fault. And in a toxic relationship, there are weak or non-existent boundaries. So there is no area where you really feel you can say, that's enough. You set up a boundary, they will knock it down. You ask them to respect it, they won't. They will just constantly override your boundaries. So a no is never a no. They will work on wearing you down. So they will ask questions that other people in your life would never think to ask, because it would totally go against your privacy. They would know that it was none of their business. But in a toxic relationship, there's no such thing as your business. Everything the toxic person believes is up for discussion, and they don't have those boundaries and they won't keep those boundaries. There is also threats, intimidation and lies, and constantly lying about other people in the family, constantly stirring the pot, saying other people said things about you that they didn't, thriving on that sort of drama, threats like cutting you out of the inheritance, the threats like kicking you out of the family, all of those different sorts of things that are designed again to keep that control and to keep you where they want you to be in the relationship. Now just keep in mind that as I talk about this, I'm sort of talking more at the very extreme end of a toxic relationship, but most of the characteristics are there. They may be in greater or lesser extents, but they're still going to be present in that toxic relationship. And a toxic relationship feels very unsafe. And it's unsafe in all those different areas of our life. So if it's a toxic relationship where there is physical and emotional abuse, then you don't feel safe with that person. It means that you're walking on eggshells, trying not to set them off. If they're verbally abusive, the same sort of thing, that you don't say things, you don't make a fuss, you don't stand up. Or it may be the opposite, that you are the one who stands up to them, and so there's constant butting of heads. And financially as well, you can find yourself put in a position where the toxic person is irresponsible, they don't pay their rent, they don't pay their bills, they don't have anything ready, and they're constantly needing you or somebody else in the family to pay their bills, to look after them, to find them somewhere to live. So it's a drain on all of your resources. So some of the common issues that you'll come up against in a toxic parent relationship is that constant criticism and fault finding. And a lot of my clients say that the minute they see that their parent is on the phone, their gut starts to churn immediately. They don't want to have a conversation because either they feel like they're going to be attacked, they feel like they're going to be drawn into a drama, they feel like it's going to be this big outpouring of, you know, their pain, their stress, their complaining. all of those different sorts of things. Being told that, you know, you should have done more, being told, you know, why weren't you there, all of those different things. So there's that constant feeling of never being able to please the parent, and that they're constantly finding fault in what you do. The chronic dependency is the sorts of things that I was talking about before. Now, this can range from, I have clients whose parent, even though they're capable of getting on a bus or taking public transport because they refuse to drive, they don't. So they keep calling my client all the time, booking appointments in advance, and then expecting my client to drop everything and take her to the doctor, take her to see her friends, take her to do the shopping, all of those different sorts of things. So there's that chronic sense of feeling dependency, at the same time ignoring any boundaries that you put up to try and control that. There can be alcohol or addiction, and it can be things like addiction to gambling, being down at the pokies all the time, spending all of their money, the constant drinking, addiction to illegal drugs or prescription drugs, all of those different sorts of things. There can be violence and intimidation, and again, that is not feeling safe to be with that person, starting to change your behaviour so that you don't set them off, and noticing that when you're with them, you really change the way that you are. So you become, in a sense, like a different person. You treat them very differently. You tiptoe around them. One of the key characteristics of someone who's been in a relationship with a toxic parent is they're incredibly sensitive to the emotional atmosphere of other people. They're keen observers, like they see every little detail. They can read people like a book. And generally that's because as they grew up, that became their form of attention. They became extremely observant of their parents and the other people around them in order to read those emotional cues to keep themselves safe. The toxic parent is unreliable and untrustworthy. They will let you down. They will lie about you. They will set you up. They will break their promises. They will tell you lots of things that they're going to do, and then they won't do it. And it can be in big, major ways, or it can be in small ways, like agreeing to come and look after your child, or agreeing to come and help you and then just not turning up. You can never really depend on them. Any time that you ask them to do something, there can be that feeling of anxiety in the pit of your stomach, and that constant feeling you've got to have a backup plan just in case it doesn't come through. So you can't be relaxed and just make plans. There's always got to be something else that you've got to do just because you can't trust them. In extreme cases, there can be shunning. And that is more common in religious sects or very strong ethnic groups where there is an expectation of following the faith that they believe in, or the rules and regulations of the ethnic group. Or there can be ultimatums. So, you know, you must marry or date somebody that's one of us. You must do this job. You must, you know, be expected to look after your family. And if you don't do these things, then you won't be in the family. It comes down as clear and simple as that. And they can also say that not only will you lose us and lose the family, but you can also lose the community as well. And so there's that sort of things that can come in, and that constant pressure and control to keep you there. Manipulative and controlling, and so the manipulation is constantly taking place, and the toxic parent usually likes to do this through other people. They love doing it with your partners, they love doing it with your children, and they love doing it with brothers or sisters or siblings. So there's that telling lies, creating drama, using guilt, really trying to push every button that you have for one simple reason, and that's just they want you to do what they want you to do. It's as simple as that. They like to get their own way, and so they're going to do what it takes for that to happen, and they don't really care about the effect on you. And again, remember, we're talking about the other extreme. Financial dependency or theft. As I was saying before, I have a client who had two parents, and one has passed away. The other one is currently living with her, and I'm working with her to help her manage that effectively. And both of her parents were addicted to the pokies, and so when they got their pensions, they would be down spending that at the pokie machine and living very much above their means. And she was expected to pay the bill when the electricity was going to get cut off, or she was expected to pay the rent when they were short and they couldn't do it. So there was that feeling of dependency. She couldn't trust her father. If there was money left in the house, he would go through her purse, he would take the money out. He actually took money from her children's piggy bank. So very, very untrustworthy to have around. Some toxic family members will do things like ask you to put a loan in their name and then renege on the payments, leaving you in the lurch and leaving you in debt. That's the severe end of the case. And favouritism, so playing one child off against the other, or having one very clear favourite who is like the golden child and making it very clear that you're not. And the favourite one, and this is the one that I see most of my clients come to me about, is the relationship sabotage. And what generally happens is that they meet someone, the parent either tries to take over that person by really befriending them, really trying to get to know them, trying to get on their good side, trying to find out their secrets, and then they turn against them, or they start telling lies about them, or they start trying to make you choose between them and the partner. And this can happen often very subtly, and it can also be very blatant. But toxic parents generally love to try and sabotage your relationship because they don't want to lose their connection and control with you. So why is it so hard to deal with these toxic family members? And it's because we have all these beliefs and expectations about what a family should be. And a family should be a safe place. A family should be the people who love us the most. A family should be the ones who are always there for us, that love us unconditionally, that we can trust and we can turn to, the ones who accept us and support us. We have all of those beliefs. We want them to be different, and that's one of the biggest issues that makes this so hard, because we have all these beliefs and we have all, if you like, this myth about what families and parents should be. We so desperately want the mother of our dreams, or the father of our dreams, or the family, so we could just be like we think everybody else is, or we could just have the families that we see that our friends have, or we could just have that love, that unconditional love of the mother or the father. And this is a major one. We really do tend to minimise the effect that it has, and so you downplay it, you're used to it, it just becomes part of managing your daily life. So it is difficult to deal with, and when something is so stressful, something is so difficult, what we tend to do is sort of rationalise it away, or we say, oh, that wasn't so bad, you know, really, I can deal with that, I've got broad shoulders, it really doesn't upset me. So we constantly downplay the effect that it has. We make excuses for them. So, if there is drugs or alcohol involved, or they just do those things that are so upsetting, we do make excuses. Say, oh, well, you know, they're getting old. Oh, well, that's just the way they are. Oh, well, maybe I upset them. Oh, well, they're not feeling well. All of those different sorts of things. We make excuses for the behaviour and we justify it. We blame ourselves. And this is one that goes along just so well with all the guilt and manipulation that toxic parents are so good at. A lot of people with a toxic parent have a belief that if they could just try a bit harder, if they could just do a bit more, if they could just get the job, or if they could just get the results at school, or if they could just make their parents proud of them, or they could just get that approval. So they blame themselves for the way they're being treated. And if you talk about your father or your mother, you know, who are the people who, you know, they brought us into this world, the people who are supposed to always be there for us, the people, you know, who raised us and supposed to love us. When we sit there and try and talk honestly about how we feel about our mother or father, we can feel this incredible guilt, and it can be almost crippling. And most people in toxic family relationships live with this awful sense of guilt and disloyalty because they should respect their parent and they should support their parent and they should be grateful, and all of those different sorts of things that our society and our religion and our faith can expect us to have. And that's a really difficult one that a lot of people suffer very badly with. We also want them to be wrong. And this is in those cases where you're constantly at loggerheads with your family, or they're doing the wrong thing, or they're doing something that you don't like, or you're not talking to them, or there's been a family blow up. We want them to be wrong so that we can be right. And they may very well be wrong. But it can become one of those things where if they would just admit they were wrong, then that would be all right. It can catch you up in that argument. It makes it incredibly difficult to deal with them. So what you can't do, and this is where we start to really think about, okay, how can I help myself? You can't change them. This is the biggest issue that causes the most pain, is that coming to a place of acceptance. There is nothing that you can do that is going to change your family or your parents. There is no magic words. There is no great behaviour. There is nothing that you can do to make them any different than who they are. You cannot reason with them. You just can't reason with them. With most people that you have conflict with, you can have a conversation, you can talk it out. With a toxic person, you can't do that. They will not listen. They have no interest in hearing your side because it's all about them. They're incredibly self-centered. There's no way of being the perfect daughter or the perfect son or the perfect child. There's no formula to follow that if you act in a certain way or if you just did a little bit more, there is nothing that is going to change them. You can't expect them to put you first. And this is where that desire that we have for our parent to be different than who they are, this is where it really comes up and bites you, because we want that. There is a part of us that is yearning for them to do that. And we expect that, and our expectations are constantly disappointed, and that just causes so much pain. You can't please them. And if you ever do actually succeed in pleasing them, you'll find out pretty quickly that it doesn't last. There's just another thing that needs to be done and another thing that to get them to approve it, and there's another carrot that will be dangled in front of you. There is no pleasing them. You can't trust them. You may be able to trust them with certain things, but what you can't trust them with is you, your welfare, your benefit, your feelings, your secrets. You can't trust them to be there when you need them. And most importantly, you can't keep ignoring the impact that it has on you and your family. And when I work with my clients, what they think before we really start getting into our work together is they really think that it's not having an effect on their family. They think it's just them and their parents and that they're keeping it all under control, and that it's not being, nobody else in their family, their partner, their children is being affected, but it is. And how it's affected is that your partner, your children are watching the effect that it has on you. They're watching the way you're being treated. They're watching you being taken for granted. They're watching you being stressed and upset and hurt. And as much as you think you're dealing with it or you're managing it or you're keeping it from them, you're not. It is having an effect on your relationship, on your family, and on everybody else around you, including your friends, work, everything. So what you can do, the first thing that you really need to understand is that you are responsible for you. And you need to take action to protect yourself, because as we talked about before, you cannot trust your toxic parent to do it for you. So it means you're going to make responsibility for you important. You're going to take appropriate action to minimize the effect on you. You need to accept that you can't change them. And that is the one that you're going to find you're going to struggle against the most, because there's still that hope that if you just find the magic word, the right action, whatever it is, if you just find that they're going to turn into the parent that you want them to be, or you're finally going to make them happy or proud. You have to accept the fact that who they are is who they are. And more importantly, you have a right to be who you are and live your life the way you want to live it. But if you believe that, then the other side of it is that you have to respect they have a right to be who they are. And if that's the way that they are, then we as the people who have a problem with them need to take responsibility to look after us. Because that person is not going to change. They may not seem happy, they may seem miserable, but they are living their life in the way that they choose. They're making decisions as adults, and it's working for them. Even if they're miserable, even if they're complaining, still, they have a choice as an adult to live life their way, and you have a choice as well on how you want to live your life and to start to make those decisions. So accepting the fact that you can't change your toxic parent is the most important and difficult step. You can refuse to be manipulated and guilted. And this again is one that's going to take time to get over all of those years of allowing yourself or being manipulated by a master. Sometimes you can't even see how you've been manipulated because it's just so much a part of your life. So this is taking action to protect you and understanding that your feelings, your health, your family, your job, your finances have to be the most important thing to you. And when you start doing that, and you start understanding that they are responsible for how they feel, they are responsible for the decisions and choices that they make, they are responsible for the consequences of their actions. You are responsible for you. One of the biggest things that I help my clients to do is start to limit and take control of the time that they spend with their parents and their family. And there is very different, ingenious ways that we've come up with doing this. So it's about you deciding, how much time do I really want to spend in my given situation? How much can I actually start to think about trying to control that and limit that and minimize that so that it's having less impact on me? So some of the things that my clients have done, they've decided that they will speak to their parent twice a week instead of every day. And so we've worked over time at establishing boundaries. We've practiced the conversations and setting that up with their parent, and it has been manageable. It does take strategy, it does take practice, and it does take support, but it can be done. So start to think about ways that you can limit the contact wherever possible and make it more manageable for you. I know that's a challenging one, but just start to let a few ideas start to go through your mind. You really need to put your own feelings first, and this is not selfish. This is absolutely essential. The only way you're going to start to get some control back is to start to really understand and support yourself and know that your feelings and your needs and your life have to be more important. The more you support yourself, the more you look after yourself, the more that you give yourself the peace that you need and start to stop feeling responsible for somebody else and paying all of that mental attention to their drama, to the manipulation, to the guilt, to the chatter, you start to get your life back. And so it's not selfish, regardless of what they may say or you may be told. It is absolutely essential. This is a big one. You need to learn how to say no, and you need to really mean it. One of the best tools that you can use when you start saying no is to practice with small things and never say sorry. The minute you say, oh, sorry, but you've weakened your no. No is a complete sentence. No, I don't want to requires no further justification or explanation. You are allowed to say no. So drop sorry from your vocabulary when it comes to saying no. No, I don't want to. No, I'm not going to do that. No, that doesn't feel comfortable. No, I'm not doing it. Start with other people if you find it challenging with your parents. Start with the people who are easiest. But drop any sorries, drop any explanation. You do not owe anybody a story of why you can't do it. Start setting strong boundaries and then keeping them. And what generally happens with toxic parents is in the past you've set a boundary and they've just steamrolled right over it, or you've set a boundary and they wore you down and so you let the boundary go. It's no good having boundaries if you don't tell people what they are. So first, you have to know what your boundaries are. You have to know what's important to you, and then you need to start developing strategies to keep those boundaries in place. So let's think about the issue of communication. Say you've got a parent who calls you every day, every night at 7 o'clock, and it's just not convenient for you. You don't want to be on the phone every night at 7 o'clock to your parent. So what you start to do is say, okay, I want to talk to mum 3 times a week, or I want to see mum once a week. And so maybe it would be better if I went and picked mum up, I took her out, we had a coffee, then I dropped her home. So start to get creative with how you want to enforce those boundaries and how you can help yourself to keep them. It can be things like saying, well, no, I'm not going to lend you money. No, I'm not going to be responsible for your bills. No, I'm not going to be able to drop you to the doctors. You're going to have to start taking a taxi, or you're going to have to start making other arrangements. It's really about getting yourself to understand and really start to support yourself to know what is yours and what belongs to them. So what you're responsible for. You're responsible for your feelings, your thoughts, your actions, your behaviours, your choices. That's your business. Your parents are responsible for their thoughts, their choices, their actions. That's their business. So you've got to start to get really, really clear about what is your business and what belongs to them, and start to make that very distinct. Now, I know some of you are probably sitting there going, oh, Kerry, you don't know my parent. Well, I do. I have heard it all, and I've heard some horrendous stories from the sublime to the ridiculous. What you need to do first is just really understand you are not responsible for them. You are not responsible for their happiness. You are not responsible for living their version of the life they think you should be living. You're not here to make them happy. You are here for you. You are here for your life. You absolutely deserve to have a happy, healthy life that is in your control. You are not here for them. And that's where this gets so difficult, because it's separating all of those emotions and all of that manipulation and all of that guilt and all of the things you've been programmed and told, and the expectations. But it can be done. So with boundaries, you're going to start small and work your way up. And most importantly, get help and support when you need it. It's really critical that you have someone on your side. So when you start making boundaries, it's a good idea to start to think about how can you bring in the rest of your family? How can you bring in your partner if you have one? How can you bring in your children if you have children? How can you get the support of a friend who's open to helping you and keeping your courage up? So getting that support to really understand you are not responsible for pleasing them. We also need to look at our part in this process. And when I started off the webinar, I was saying that, you know, it's never 100% wrong on one side. This is no right or wrong. This is just two different people with two different ways of managing the world. And we all have a part to play in this, and we play this consciously or unconsciously. So you may be the responsible one. And the responsible one is generally the one of the siblings who is the one who gets left as the caretaker, who is the one who is expected to take the parent in, or to look after the parent, or to keep in touch with the parent, or to, keep all the family together. It's a role that you've taken on, or you've been told to take on, or it's the way you are in your family. There's the good girl or the good boy, and that's the one who wants to please. So you may find yourself wanting to get their approval. For some people, this is really, really so painful. They so crave their mother or father just to say, we're so proud of you, to say we love you, to say all of those things they've been wanting to hear, and so they don't speak up. The good girl or the bad or the good boy is the one who always does the right thing, who is always there, who will drop everything to their own detriment to be there. And again, these are general outlines. Many of us can play different parts of these different roles. But just have a think about which one you might resonate with. There's the defender or the protector, and that can be the person who will, for example, if mum is a victim to dad, then the defender takes on the role of looking after mum, taking mum's side, keeping mum away from dad, seeing dad as the bad one, all of those different sorts of things. So they become the caretaker of that parent. There's the peacemaker, and this is the one that when there is the latest family drama, the peacemaker is the one who gets on the phone to everybody afterwards and says, oh, come on, mum didn't really mean it, or, dad had too much to drink, or come on, let's everybody get together. The peacemaker is the one who puts their own feelings, their own hurt, all of those things to the side, and they try and bring everybody back together. And the peacemaker is also the one who's seen as the strong one as well. They're usually like the counsellor in the family. They're the one that everybody in the family goes to talk about the issues with the parents. There is the black sheep. That's generally the person who really rebels and goes the other way, but still keeps going back home and sort of likes to throw it in the family's face at what they're doing, but they're still there. They're often the one that the parent wants to try and control the most, so they will get all the other siblings involved on trying to bring that person back. The black sheep is the one who will maybe turn to drugs, maybe turn to alcohol, maybe get in trouble with the law, all of those different ways of negative attention seeking that they may have started doing as teenagers. But again, it's that role that gets caught up with the parents. It's a way of continuing that toxic relationship. There is the martyr, and that is the one who sacrifices everything for the parent or the family. And in many cases I've seen this as a woman or a man who has never been married, has done the job that the parents expected of them, has been the one to take on the financial burden, or has been the one who is desperately unhappy and always complaining about the parents, but who still won't do anything about it. And the ostrich is probably the more common one, that you realise that it's difficult, and it may be that the parent is not at the extreme, but it's enough. There is things there that are upsetting, but they refuse to see it. They don't want to know about it. They'd rather just go their own way, because if they really saw what was happening, if they really allowed themselves to see what it was like, then they would feel that they would have to do something about it. And so it's easier just to pretend that it's not happening, or to minimize it, or to make excuses. And you often see this played out with different siblings in the family, where they will go to the person who has been the ostrich and saying, can't you see what's going on with mum? Can't you see how she's, talking to your husband? Can't you see what she's doing? And they don't want to know. They don't want to know. They want to stay there and not have to do anything about it. But at the same time, they can be incredibly affected by it. So why is it so important that you take action for yourself? For your emotional and physical health. I have seen people who have been so affected by stress from their parents that they have been unable to hold a relationship, they've been unable to hold a job, they are deeply unhappy. Your health, your emotions, your right to enjoy your life is so important. And even if you don't think it is taking a toll on you, it is. For your happiness and your well-being, and you have a right to be happy. You are here to live your life, not the life that your parents have decided that you should have, not by their rules, not sacrificing for them. You have a right to have a happy, peaceful life and achieve your dreams. For your partner and your children and your friends if you had one, and as I said before, sometimes we think that it's only between me and my mum. It's only between me and my dad. I don't let that affect my family and my relationship. But it does, because they're watching you. And I see this so often with couples that they will argue so much because the partner gets so angry at the parent, at the toxic parent, for the way that they treat their husband or wife. And they want to defend them. But the child of the toxic parent gets stuck in that denial, and they try and minimize it, and then they try and defend, and it can ruin relationships. You deserve to have a happy, healthy, loving relationship with your partner and your children and your friends. It is your life. And for your right to live the best possible life that you can have with as much safety and peace. And of course there's going to be compromise. Of course there's going to be things that are going to happen and that need to be done, and decisions that need to be made. But even with all of that, you deserve to have the best possible life that you can create for you. And because if you get one thing out of this webinar tonight, I really want you to get this one. You are the only person that you are truly responsible for. One of the first things that I work on with my clients is getting them to accept 100% responsibility for their own happiness, their own health, and their own life, and allowing everybody else to have that same right. So why is this so challenging and difficult? Well, it's going to mean you're going to have to be dealing with those feelings of guilt and anxiety that you've been carrying around with you. And a lot of us resist looking at that. What I can tell you after working with all of the clients that I have is that the fear of experiencing those feelings is always bigger than the actual event. It's like a big monster that we build up in our minds. And most often when we start dealing with this, the relief is incredible and so amazing. This is the most painful one. It's going to mean finally giving up on that dream relationship with your family. And this is the heartbreaking one. You know, if you've ever gone through any sort of relationship breakup, you know that the most difficult part is not the breakup itself. It's letting go of the dream of what it could have been and what it meant and how, if things had been different, it's giving up that dream. And when it comes to our parents, this is a huge one, because there is part of us that is yearning for that loving mum and that loving dad that we don't have. And this is also a big one. It will mean risking the disapproval of extended family and friends. And toxic parents are really, really good at getting other people involved, getting other people taking side, getting other people ringing you up and saying, what are you doing? How could you treat your parents like that? That's a huge fear. It will mean setting those boundaries and enforcing them. And it may mean losing friendships or relationships. The good news, and there is good news, this is doable. It does take time. It does seem like such a huge, difficult issue, but I promise you, it can change. It takes some time, it takes some skills, it takes some hypnotherapy, it takes different sorts of things, but I have seen it happen, and I have seen people's lives change, and I've actually seen the relationship with the toxic parent change for the better in totally unexpected ways. Now, if anybody has a snake phobia, turn away from your screen now. Okay, if you have a toxic parent, let's think of them this way. This is a snake. This is a perfectly good snake. This snake, in its snaky way, is a very happy snake. It likes its life as a snake. It's getting everything that it needs as a snake. It's enjoying life as a snake. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this snake. It's extremely snaky. I want you to think about your toxic parent as a snake. They're happy being a snake. When we have a snake for a parent, the hard part is accepting that is a snake, because what we want is this. We want a fluffy bunny. We want them to be different than who they are. We want them to be very, very different. We want them to be warm. We want them to be loving. We want them to be safe. They're not. So if you had a snake in your home, are you going to try and reason with it? Are you going to try and rationalize it away? Are you going to Google to see, what can I do with a snake? You're not. If you've got a dangerous snake in your house, either you're going to get the snake out of your house, or you're going to create something in your house that's going to safely keep the snake there so that you can interact with the snake and still be safe. So you've really got to start seeing your parent for who they are, not who you want them to be. And my Toxic Family program is all about working with these issues specifically. What do you do? What are the skills? What are the issues? What is the support you need? What is the conversations that you need to have? How do you keep those boundaries? How do you even know what boundaries to set? There's all of those things to talk through. But it can be done, and it has been done really successfully, and lots of people's lives have been changed through this. So now I'm going to try and get this back to me. And let's see if, here I am. So, questions. Buffering issues. I don't know if anybody's having buffering issues. Does anybody have any questions? If you have a question, ask it now. This is going to be replayed and the link should go out, and I was happy to see that the reminder email went through. So no questions. Fantastic. Well, I hope you got some valuable stuff out of that. So thank you very much for joining me on my first webinar and supporting me through this. And you can contact me over at my website at www.lovetransformslc.com, or also at Love Transforms LC on Facebook. And have a great night. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully this will be the first of many more webinars on different topics. So have a great night, everybody, and thank you. Bye.